let's just get set up here real quick while we're waiting for everyone to join the live stream. If you are watching a re-recording of this, welcome back to Fat Beans Roasting Laboratory. Like I said, we're going to let some people kind of populate before we start the show today, and then we will jump into it. So I am going to just tweak a little bit here and just play around with the everything. All right, so sorry about the little delay there. Like I said, relatively new to this, so always working out tweaks, trying to perfect it as best that I can in the early stages. But you know, anytime you get into something new, the first thing you realize is just how far behind the curve you are, whether that be technology or last night was internet. There's always a lot of things that go into putting something like this together. So I want to go ahead and apologize about last night. I think I got whatever it was corrected. I was able to tweak with the internet, mess around with a couple of settings on my computer. So hopefully we'll have a pretty stable stream here on out. So welcome in. If there is any sort of delays, you notice any choppiness, if you could please just drop that in the chat so I can make some real-time fixes. It will help me out immensely, especially in the infancy of these streams. The more I can dial it in and kind of get an idea of what's working, what's not working, will always benefit me greatly. So I do appreciate all of that input. Also, questions are always welcome throughout the entire roast. Kind of the setup for how we're going to roast today. We will run through the new roast. I will discuss what we're going to do with the roast, give you a kind of a rundown of why I chose it, some things that I'm going to be trying to do in the roasting cycle. We'll roast the beans up, and then we'll chat a little bit at the end, kind of about why I got into roasting and what kind of inspires me as far as what I just, you know, at the start about 6 or 7 years ago now, it just kind of clicked in my head and really became a major passion of mine that I'm now pursuing more and more every day. Okay, so about the roast. Today we're doing one of our Sweet Maria's 1 pounds. So like we've done with our 1 pounders in the past, we're going to cut this in half pound, half pound. I'm going to make some predictions about what I want to try to do. I'm going to try to manipulate the roast as best as I can. I will then evaluate it both on texture and aroma and flavor, most importantly, and then I'll make any sort of adjustments and give you guys kind of a rundown of what we are getting into on the roast that we're trying to do. So just to present what this roast is, this is a Nicaraguan Buenos Aires Lot 1. Nicaraguans are like a lot of other Central Americans. Central American beans are prized in many different sectors because of their high-grown nature. Also, excluding Panama, they can have really relatively mild climates with not a lot of big storms or anything. Panama, because of the fact that it's small and surrounded by 2 oceans relatively close, does have some interesting weather that does create some interesting coffee. But Nicaraguan and other Central Americans and South Mexicans are great because they can be roasted relatively dark and hold many of their chocolate and kind of their bitter tastes, their beneficial bitter tastes. So we will be doing a Nicaraguan today. So I'll let you kind of just get a look at the flavor profiles there. Okay, bean can. So what it is, it's the description is crowd pleasing, balanced, bittersweet, brown sugar, vanilla bean, chocolate wafer, dried apple, and a sweetly disappearing aftertaste. Um, it does ask that it's roasted to about city plus or full city, meaning the pulling the heat after first crack or really not allowing a lot of development time after first crack is probably not going to do it, especially for those tastes down the road, the vanilla bean, the chocolate wafer, and the brown sugar. Where you're going to get those tastes is from the bitter side of your taste buds. So you want to get the sugar and the bitter, and when the sugars and bitters pair together, that's how you start to create that vanilla bean chocolate wafer sensation. So we're going to try to take this a little bit darker. I'm going to take it well past this city, try to move it closer to the full city, not quite second crack. So what we're going to do this time is um, we're going to probably go about a minute and a half into its development. That's going to make quite a bit darker. So hopefully you'll be able to see the difference from, say, roasts we've done in the past where we've gone relatively light to something we're going to try to do darker. Now, if it completely goes to pot, well, we got the second half pound, but this will be a fun one to experiment with. Nicaragua in Buenos Aires. I was kind of thinking if I mentioned that, you would be the first one to jump all over that. Good air exists in many places. Have you done this one before? I have never done this one before. Full disclosure, last year around Christmas, I got it in my head that I was going to convert an air popcorn popper into a roaster. So I've been planning on roasting for a really long time now. You can see I took it apart and I had these big, wild dreams about what I was going to do. But regrettably enough, I just got a little bit intimidated. So I actually went to a local roaster in Kansas City and just asked for some green beans, and he sold me some Nicaraguan beans. Those stayed in my cabinet for the better part of until I bought this roaster in August. So they just kind of sat in a cabinet, and it was kind of a trophy to my failed dream of becoming a roaster. But when I bought this roaster, first thing I ever roasted was Nicaraguan, and let me tell you, I burnt it and I messed it up and I under roasted it. So I roasted one, but this will be my first real go at this type of Nicaraguan. So like many of these Sweet Maria 1 pounds that I do, it's completely open waters. I've never been out here before, so the fun part is just to see what I can do with it, and then the second roast, what kind of corrections I can make. So, going to adjust my roaster here, get it all set up for you guys. So, full disclosure, I got the roasting basket still in. So if you remember from the last couple of roasts, I've been leaving the roasting basket in. I've now convinced myself that somehow that makes it better. So now I preheat it with the basket in. Like I was telling you last night and a couple other roasts, it probably doesn't do anything. Just like the preheat, it probably changes just the smallest. But now, because I can't track numbers, it's in my superstition. When you can't follow variables and you don't have science to go off of, you just start making stuff up. So now I put the basket in and I heat the basket now. So that's a thing. Okay, so heating up my roaster, grabbing my notes here, and want to take good notes because as we've seen that when I've done kind of the virgin roast before, it's important for me at least to be able to track it so I can make the adjustments that I'm looking for. So we're going to go a little bit darker. So I'm also, and this just popped in my head, I think what I want to do is I also want to preheat it a little bit more. So instead of 200, we're going to do 215 preheat too. So got my notes all sketched out here. Kind of got it a little bit of a description that I can follow about what I'm trying to do. Okay, so catalog, now we weigh. So we're gonna split this into half-pound sections. Following the bean cam, we already got it all set up. We're just gonna weigh out, since this is a pound, we're just gonna do a half a pound to split it evenly 50-50. Close enough. And for those of you just joining us, we are doing a Nicaraguan, and we're trying to take it full city, well, city plus full city. So we're going to do, this will be my first foyer into a darker roast in an effort to try to gain more of the calmed notes. This is a very balanced bittersweet cup according to the roast notes, so hopefully we can get something that has a really good sugary, chocolatey taste. Okay, so right now we are not actually roasting any beans. We are simply just preheating the machine. Preheating is become part of my ritual with this machine. In a gas drum or a commercial drum, you must preheat it. If you have, like, let's say you're doing 10 kilos of coffee. 10 kilos would equate to about 20 pounds. Now that's a pretty big. That would be a pretty big roaster to do 20 pounds. But the taking something like that at room temperature and dropping into your roaster, you would slow the roaster down by minutes. So what they actually do is they will preheat the drum. They'll get the drum as hot as they possibly can, and then it drops the beans in. So preheating is pretty common through most phases of roasting. Now with this little Be More machine, you have the two camps, preheat, not preheat. I tend to have found myself on the preheat camp. So we're right where we want to be, so let's cut the power. Gotta remember to put my trusty heat gloves on. They're just barbecue mitts. And let's grab our drum here. And let's load the hopper. Okay. Hot hopper. Beans. Probably work a little better if the wood was on. Okay, so we load it in, drop our chap tray in, and I'll set you guys up with the bean cam so you can watch the magic take place real time. Tweak your guys' view here. There's a like all things, bear with me. I'm perfecting my art of camera angling. The real amateur broadcaster here when it comes to me messing around with the cameras or the sound or the ums. So bear with me on that. So there's your bean shot. So you have your green beans, and we're trying to get some heat in our beans, and we're trying to dry our beans out as much as possible. Like I said, if there's ever any questions while we're roasting, please drop those in the chat. There's a couple of things I like to hit on while I'm doing a roast that I like to reiterate time and time again. So if you're just seeing something for the first time or you're not quite sure, please interject that in the chat, and I'll answer that. So love the bean cam. Sound and internet great so far. So that's a good. I think I made some tweaks. We're using just a little laptop, and I think these two cameras have got it maxed out. And I think if there's any sort of problem, whether it be the internet or I have too many windows open, which I'm notorious for, having way too many tabs open, I think that just pulled the computer out too far. Zero cutting out issues this time so far, so great. If you did watch, go back and watch some of the videos. You notice it spliced it into three, and it was a technical train wreck. So thank you for kind of sticking around with me on that. Um, right now we are at 239. Remember, I did preheat it a little bit more than I normally do. So that is 239 is a little warmer after 2 minutes than normal, but we have a more of a preheat. We're being a little bit more aggressive with where we're trying to go. So we'll just keep tracking the time. It'll be really important for me to keep running the buttons on this new roast just so I can get the best data possible. So when we turn around and do the second roast, we're able to really find and monitor what worked and what did not work. Okay. Um, while we're letting it heat up and process, I'll go ahead and just give you guys some notes about the last roast. So I did an Ethiopian last night. The first roast that I did on the Ethiopian has finally hit 3 days. We did a tasting on that. I really, really enjoyed it. I know Julie enjoyed it as well. People that like the fruity, I think we did a good job of really getting fruity. In fact, I let one of my coworkers, Belvarte, in the chat here, she tasted it and she definitely said it was too fruity. So it's good. That's what I was looking for. I'll drop a full report of the tastes. Will probably be tomorrow on the Instagram. So be looking for that of the tasting notes. If you're just a person who says, I gotta know what that tastes like, right there. It is harder to roast darker because it's easier to mess up. Well, yes and no. It is easier to mess up in the sense that if you go too dark, you're left with something that doesn't have any flavor left. All the sugar burns up, and you have very carbonated drink. It's easier in the sense that you're just going for a balanced taste. So a lot of times, professional roasters mostly stick with a medium dark because they don't really have to try to manipulate taste. And when you stop manipulating taste, then you don't really have to worry about where you get coffee. You start worrying about buying coffee on bulk or buying coffee, for price instead of buying coffee for specialty or tracking unique flavors. So it should be easy, a little bit easier in the sense that I'm just going to be able to kind of looking for a balanced cup. I won't be chasing all these like higher fruity notes. I don't have to worry about burning those off. But I don't want to go too dark, or the whole thing is just not going to be palatable. And I'm not a bitter fan, so too dark for me happens a lot sooner rather than later. So 5 minutes in, we're heating up good. Um, haven't seen the yellowing yet. I do see a little bit paling of the beans, not quite the yellow. If you are just joining us, welcome to the Twitch channel. If you have not followed me on Twitch yet, please do make an account and follow. Follows early on in the stage. This allows me to just let you. Twitch will kind of send you an alert every time I'm roasting. I am always going to try to roast at this time and try to be very forward about when I'm going to do the roasting or the future shows that I'll be doing. But if you could give me a follow on Twitch, that would be much appreciated. And I appreciate everyone who's in and asking me questions and just keeping me company on this Thursday night. My assistant is having a birthday tomorrow, so she is out just getting some time away from the kids. So I am Mr. Dad tonight. So if I have to just shut the whole roast down and run away, that's because someone's out of bed. So I just want to set you up with any technical difficulties on not so much with the computer, but the lifestyle style. Okay, so 314 at 6 minutes. That's hot. That's good. If we're gonna go dark, that means we'll get to first crack when we want to. I'll need to keep a close eye. I don't want to overheat the machine past its capabilities. So I'm gonna go ahead and just cut the power for just a second. I've actually cut it down to 25% power. It's heating up a little too fast at this stage. So the last thing I want it to do is reach the critical phase where this little machine will jump off. It's quirky. It's not my favorite, but you play with the machine that you have at the time. Okay, so looks like we're losing a little heat, but we're balanced right about 320. That's where I want to be. For those of you tracking the bean cam, you can see that they've moved from green. They're more of that cinnamon now. So they're drying out, and we're entering into a more favorable roast temperature. I'll go ahead and kick the power back to full power and let this thing just hopefully stay on full power until we enter first crack. It's looking pretty balanced, and the air is rich with the scent, the odors, so the roast is coming along very nicely. With darker, do you want to get slow but higher heat, or does the timing quickness of the heat matter as much? With darker roasts, you can be a little bit more cavalier, so you can run it faster because the really tender tastes are the acid tastes. So when you run past them a little bit and you're chasing the sugary tastes, you can be a little bit more cavalier. So even though I don't do dark roast, I'm actually chasing a harder roast profile. Medium to darker roasts are actually much easier. In fact, French roast is the easiest. You just get it to second crack and you just try to pull it out before it burns. But you're really not having any taste. You're just going for something really bold and something really intense, kind of that shock you awake taste. Okay, so we balanced out our temperature very nicely here. We're running a good even temp. The exhaust temperature is about 300 degrees, and the beans are still taking on color. So hopefully we can get to first crack within the next minute, but if we don't, that's okay too. So, so we're coming along quite nicely. Inside temperature, exhaust temperature is increasing quite a bit. I don't want to pull you off the beans to show you the temperature, so you'll have to take my word for it. But everything seems to be going in about the pattern that I'm used to. So even though this is a new beans, it's still treating the machine, still going through the phases in a very similar manner. I've heard some real faint moving around. It might be a little bit of the metal popping, but I think we're coming up on first crack here any moment. So I will quiet down and let you listen to the sweet symphony of the roast. There's pop, check the external temperature. There's about 350 on the exhaust temp. Hearing some early pops. So what I'm going to do is once I hear about 2 or 3 consecutive pops, I'm going to wait 15 seconds and then I'm going to drop the heat. That's something I don't normally do with my lighter ones, but that is one thing So 15 seconds from now. That's a full roar. All right, let's cut it in. Okay, so drop the heat, changed my time, slowed down my drum. And you can tell by the bean cam it's much darker and you can see much more chaff. We're cracking nicely. I'm going to allow all the cracking to stop. The cracking is cut. Now we're going to go about 30 seconds past this to really let it darken up quite a bit. Yeah. So we'll hit our cool. and we'll take a look at see what we got. That's right. Welcome to the chat. We are roasting some Ethiopian beans. Excuse me. We're doing some Nicaraguan beans today on a Bmore 2000. You got any questions? We just finished up. I'm going to pull it out and actually externally cool it, meaning I'm just going to not let it cool inside this machine. I'm going to throw it inside of a little contraption I had to cool the machine down. You got any questions? Drop those in the chat, and I'm going to just kick it out here. I'm actually going to pull it. Now, this is incredibly hot. It's at about 410 degrees. Just to give you guys a look at it before I drop it in the cooler here. So here are our beans, and thank you for the follow, and I'm going to just drop these in. Now I am going to cut the mic so I can show you how the cooling process works. So I've hooked this up to a shop vac, so I want to just give you guys a look at how this cooling is, but it's really loud. Okay, mic's on. Just want to give you guys a chance to see how I've kind of, this machine doesn't give me a lot of options for good cooling. It's kind of like trying to cool things in a hot oven. You got to wait for it to cool down. Um, Way to measure espresso grind other than visually, then argue with people at coffee shops. So an espresso grind is normally going to be, the finest grind you possibly can get. In fact, when you have, let's say I have an encore, and some shows I'm planning on doing in the future, we're going to actually have a like go into a kitchen that we're setting up and show you some different brewing methods. But this encore, which is a really nice home grinder, it has a hard time doing espresso grinds. I noticed you mentioned buying a grinder. Some hand grinders you can get for relatively cheap as long as they're a burr grinder. If you got like so the difference is like say a spinning blade, that is just a flat blade. It's just going to crush it and get you very uneven sides. So if you were trying to do an espresso grind with a flat blade, you would get some big chunks and some almost unedible dusts. So a burr grinder, if you're looking at saying doing small batches on your own, burr grinder and even a hand grinder can get some really, really fine stuff. There are some really nice burr grinders that are almost works of art for between $50 and $60. Now, I mean, when you start getting into, coffee can get expensive quickly, but if you're really looking for that good, fine espresso grind, I would say start with the hand grinder, and then some of the more upper end grinders can really do a nice espresso grind. Yeah, so I've actually looked at that particular brand as well, and it is a nice brand of grinder. So I would say if you're thinking about it, looking to pull the trigger, I don't think you'd be too upset. I started very, very humbly in my kind of journey to coffee, where I was drinking Folgers, and then I was pouring Folgers into a K cup, and then I started drinking a French press, and I was like, oh, I want something better. So I was grinding at the grocery store, and then I got a magic bullet out, and then now I'm grinding with an encore. I have just a little cafe, and I'm looking at a Commandante hand grinder. That it's really hard to convince my wife that I should be buying a $250 hand grinder. It's consistency I'm after. Yep, consistency. Especially if you don't want, if you're just gonna do small batches, I think you can get some good hand grinders or even some lower models that can really hit you with that consistency. But that burr grinder, you can't go wrong if we're talking burrs. Um, there are some, they're different, and if you really get into it, but I'd say if you're not grinding at all, or you get yourself a burr grinder, and that would put you in good shape. Okay, so to give you guys a look at where we're at with the coffee, we have finished our roast. We've cooled it down, and there is our final product. So I think we did a pretty good medium roast on this. We won't know until we taste it. However, just by looks alone, I could have probably taken it just a skosh darker. So we won't know until we get it in the cup. But I think when we do the second half of this pound of our test pound, I think what we're going to try to look for is a little bit darker than this. So go ahead and comment if you have any on what you think. But I think it looks even, and we'll get the grinds out of here as well. All right, so the Nicaraguan roast, it's kind of so Nicaragua and Costa Rica are really close, and I just wanted to spend tonight. I kind of teased it on Instagram, so if you'd like to drop me a follow on Instagram, I do a lot of roast notes. I do a lot of brewing stuff on there as well. It's Fat Beans Coffee Lab on Instagram. But when first we went to Costa Rica, my wife and I, for our honeymoon, and I was not a coffee drinker. I was 27 years old, and I really had never done I've really never been into any coffee. Uh, when we were talking with some friends that we had met there, and they said, "You got to go on this coffee roasting tour. You're going to love the guy. You're going to love the story." And I'm kind of a sucker for a good story, being that my profession is, history and telling stories. So uh, we went to this place not really knowing what we were going to get into. We met this about his mid 30s individual, and he just started taking us around his very, very small coffee plantation. I can't even call it a plantation, it was more of like a 2 or 3 acre farm. He starts walking us around and telling us this story how his grandfather and father had both farmed this land, and they had used pesticides and had tried to get the highest yields possible. Well, that was working really well, but his father got sick, and because his father was the only farmer, it kind of put their whole family in a bad way because many people were relying on this farm for a living. So the son was like, "Hey, we got to go organic." Well, he found out that organic was just a title, it was just a label. You had to meet all of these organic sample like styles, and then they would give you the organic label. But he found out that a lot of stuff they were using to be organic, which was natural, was just as nasty as the stuff that he was pouring the chemicals on. Because it's not that the land was out of balance. So just simply saying, "Hey, I'm going to let just nature take its course." Like coffee is a very, very subtle thing. We've talked about that a lot here. That it's a very, it's not a, it only grows in certain places because it's a very weak plant. It can't grow in our hemisphere because it's we live in too dangerous of a climate for such a fragile plant. So he switched over, and a college professor actually came to his farm and said, "Hey, I'm going to change the way you do everything." Well, luckily, this guy, his father, and him were so open minded that they were able to take this farmer's advice. And he says, "I want you to be subsistent. I want you to cut back how many plants you grow. I want you to plant more natural plants. I want you to plant food here. You guys don't plant any food on this plantation. I want you to try to feed your family. I want everyone in your family being a part of this. I want you to feel like your work is tied to a family business. I also want you guys to, look beyond just mass producing a crop. I want you to make it your livelihood." So they started giving tours, and he started roasting, and actually he tasted his own coffee for the first time. And while he was telling this story, it just started snapping in my head. I was like, this is such an amazing thing because he went away from just saying, "I'm going to produce as much as possible. I'm going to do as much as possible." they started becoming, we're going to make the best product that benefits our family the most. And from then on, like I tried the coffee and I was absolutely hooked. Like I was hooked from that day on. I just think, like, yes, I linked coffee to it, but I just said someday I'm going to try to build something like that. Not where I'm trying to mass produce something or try to, beat the market and be the biggest person in town. I'm going to focus on doing something, doing it at a level I can control that, me and my family can have fun with, and that produces us something that we can be really proud of. And that's kind of been, as I get into this roasting, we do this more and more, and I have this Twitch channel. It's just more about kind of the process and the journey, and letting you guys in on it. And like I said, I've always joked, like, you guys will keep me entertained, because I do. I mean, I'm starting on this small machine. I would like to get a little bit bigger machine, but I'm not looking to, to say I'm going to be, a massive roaster and I'm going to do it all roast. I think it's kind of fun, and I'm nothing else. I'm getting to create great tasting coffee, and I'm getting to really experience and learn more about something that really, in without sounding too corny, like, it really changed my life. That guy just made me think about things so much different. Just the joy. And I kind of joke when I tell people the story, like, he climbed up a tree, he pulled fruit out of it and said, "Here you go." And I was like, all right, I gotta be that guy. So when I roast this Nicaraguan, it kind of just takes me home. Now I know Nicaragua is not Costa Rica, but they share a border, and I think we shared that story on Instagram. So I really wanted to kind of let you guys in on that story tonight. Just give you a little bit more background about why I do this, and kind of why I've become so passionate about coffee, even though I didn't have my first real cup until I was 28. Really didn't have my first good coffee until I was probably about 30. And I know I don't look it, 33. So the last 3 years have been a really cool journey into coffee. So if you've always avoided coffee because you're like, I think it's bitter, I think it's bad, I think it tastes bad, challenge yourself to try to get good coffee. And, from good farmers, from good baristas, even if you have to become the good barista, a good roast. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about while we build this channel. A couple of quick things to let you know. Tomorrow, I know, Jill, I know you're in the chat still, hopefully. You heard me kind of say, hey, I'm going to um, be roasting every night. I am going to take a break tomorrow. We've got a birthday dinner to attend for my wife. But we are going to come back on Saturday, and we are going to do the first introduction of the kitchen show. So the sink isn't in, but the counter is. So I think Julie and I are going to roast, and then we're going to take it into the kitchen for the first time. We said we've been promoting this kitchen part for so long now. It's time to just shut up and do it. But we're going to drop ourselves in the kitchen, and we're going to brew. I'm going to brew some coffee for Julie and I. You guys feel free to brew at home, drink some coffee along with us, and we're going to have the first iteration of the roast and the brew. So that's Saturday night. So get excited for that. I think that is going to take this channel into a whole kind of a cool dynamic where we're roasting and we're brewing, and I can start answering and kind of fielding questions about, hey, how do I start brewing good coffee at home? And to a greater degree, how can I brew good coffee at work? Because that was my challenge. Was, hey, you just drink Keurig coffee at work. Well, no, like I was just having that conversation with the grinder. Like, there are ways that I have some of the best coffee right before I have to go and teach classes. So we're going to move into that. So be looking for that. Really appreciate everyone that's joined us tonight. If you've not followed, please do. That just kind of gives you an alert on the show. Also, if you've not checked us out on Instagram, that's where I'm not really the social media guy. I took a 10-year social media break, but I'm back. But that's kind of where I'm showing my, the finished products, the roast, kind of having some fun with that, telling these little stories. So nice. Very good. So this has been a lot of fun. You guys got some questions? I'd love to answer some questions if you got anything coffee related or anything else. hit me up with those before I check out tonight. I want to make sure that we're kind of creating a vibe where we are. I can open it up to anything. I don't want to just say I'm just talking about roasting, but that's what I like talking about. While I'm doing that, I'll give you guys what everyone's been waiting for, the chaff shake. So can't deny you of that. Also, if you are in my immediate sphere of influence, the 5-day roasting challenge has made a lot of beans. So be ready to accept happy donations. Okay, have you been able to find another bean like the Costa Rican one? All right. So have you been able to find another bean like the Costa Rican one? Yeah. I mean, Costa Rican. They. If you ever get a chance to go and you're looking to go to Central America, but you're a little bit reluctant and you don't speak the language. Costa Rica is like Disney World of Central America. It's the most approachable, easygoing place to go, and that's probably why a lot of people from North America go to Costa Rica. Um, Atenas is where we stayed, and it's where this coffee place was. I'll give them a shout out, El Toledo Coffee. It was in Atenas. Atenas is in the middle. They make like that's the number one export. So for the Central American countries, Costa Rica is the kind of the cash cow. I've done actually quite a bit of Costa Ricans early on because it is what my heart is after. So give you guys a label shot here. I did a 5-pound bag before I started the Twitch show. Um, I think it's nostalgia. I think sometimes you just taste something and it's like I'm never going to taste it like that because I was just so geeked up. But that's kind of what I've been chasing is this just I think because of the story and like just how like romantic it was and like him and his family. But I've tasted a lot of good coffee since then. All right. Okay. So give you one last look at the dechapped cup before we peace out. Oh yeah. So I think we got a winner here. That is a good looking medium roast. So we'll have to get it into the cup and really kind of check out what is here. Okay, so it's been good talking with all of you guys. Thanks for coming out all week and supporting my crazy hobby, keeping me company, asking good questions. I think I'm getting in, really starting to enjoy this element of it. I'm glad that I threw a camera up a couple weeks ago. So thanks for joining me. Like I said, we won't roast tomorrow, but we will roast Saturday. So Saturday 8:30. Be there because it is the unveiling of something new. Like we've never done the second studio. So this is the Fat Beans Roasting Laboratory. We're going to move into the Fat Beans Brewing Laboratory. So be there at 8:30 on Saturday night when you're like, hey Brian, we have what's this thing called a life? I know. 2 small children, to me, like Saturday night is like, that's the best night to do it because got nothing else going on. So if you're out, make sure you're being safe. Pull me up on camera. The waiter won't mind if you watch the Saturday show while you're trying for your fine dining. All right. Woo, excited. I'm excited too. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to tune out because, like I said, I'm also running double duty as, solo parent tonight. So we got to make sure that if any little sleeper gets up, I can be there to receive them as quickly as possible. But thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you guys on Saturday, and be well.